Today, you are sponsoring anarchy with your sponsor and handshake brother so that you can enslave this country. I want to promise that you will not succeed again. Tumeelewana jameni? They will not succeed. Kwa sababu sisi tumechanuka hata na sisi. Na Wakenya wanajua. Shida yao kubwa wanajua in the next 2 months hawawezi kuongea hii mambo ya unga. So ndio unaona wako na haraka sana wanasema huyu mtu tukiwacha yeye for 2 months hatutampata tena. Watu wakilipwa pesa wavunje mali, waharibu barabara, walete maafa, walete fujo. Gharama ya maisha itarudi chini kwa njia gani? Gharama ya maisha itarudi chini ama itapanda juu?
Right. So that is President William Ruto responding today to the demos and the violence that took place yesterday in various parts of the country, not just here in the capital. But then, you know, Jamila, you want to go first?
It's been a crazy week, and I was in the gallery on Friday and yesterday. When the Maandamano started. And what was different, you've just mentioned it, is that compared to the previous ones, this time the Azimio leaders, instead of maybe converging in Kamukunji, all of them in Nairobi, they went back to their home counties and they had their rallies there. And I remember on Friday, the rally in Machakos by Kalonzo Musyoka was generally, it was peaceful, and they had the speech, they launched the collecting signature drive, and then now we had Kamukunji in Nairobi, where of course the same 10-15 million signature drive was launched. And then after that, now that's when the chaos happened. And then we had tear gas in Nairobi, in Mombasa, I think Kisii was a surprising one also, because I remember it was really chaotic. Most of the day, police were engaged in running battles with the protesters. Even in Kitale, and we were saying how they started late in the afternoon. And of course, the effects, we keep talking about loss of life, we talk about damage to property. And we saw that happening again on Wednesday. And yesterday, we saw the destruction that was on the Nairobi Expressway in Mlolongo. We've counted 14 deaths so far in different parts of the country. We've seen looting. We've seen places of business being vandalized. Of course, today, we're hearing very different estimates about how much damage and how much loss as a country we faced. But really, it was a bit staggering to watch all that, Yvonne. And there's a politics bit of all this, because, of course, the Maandamanos are being called for by the opposition. But then there are the other issues that come up, because when you ask them, Maandamana kwa nini, of course, they'll tell you it's about the wananchi, the high cost of living. We had also some matatu operators and public service vehicle operators about the retesting issue. Remember, there was an issue about them having to be retested and amount of money to be paid. Of course, the Minister of Transport rescinded that decision and said we'll look at it in September. That was after there were strike notices by the PSV operators. But then, Yvonne, it was all very, very messy and very, very untidy and very destructive. And I asked myself, did the message get home? And what was the message? Yeah, when you have the Maandamano. Now we have another one coming on Wednesday. And before, on Monday, they announced it's Wednesday. But remember Monday and Tuesday, or is it Tuesday? Yeah, Monday and Tuesday, Raila Odinga did come into the city center. And he did speak to people when he took the matatu. And of course, yesterday also he spoke to people. And those were pretty okay. There was no Maandamano, there were no tear gas, there was no loss of life, there was no damage to property. And he still managed to get into the city center and speak. And his message about cost of living and all that makes me wonder, can that still happen the way it did on Monday and Tuesday and not have it turn as chaotic as it did, including children being tear gassed in school? Yeah.
Interesting questions in those loss of lives. I think as of today, it's
14, yeah.
And last week on Friday, it was 6.
Yes.
And so those are, 20 needless deaths in the span of a week from, what is essentially similar events. But some of the issues that then come up is, in all of this, we have then seen the back and forth between the leaders, right? So on one end, you've got, the president and those in UDA who also issued a strong statement out today condemning the violence and what happened. And on the other hand, you've even got a collection of signatures. I want us to listen, if we can, to Raila talking about the platform that is now up and running. Apparently, they're now collecting signatures for the same. Let's listen to what apparently they claim this is all about.
Platform is now up and running, and any Kenyan, wherever they are, you can just go to www.tumechoka.com and you will be able to access it. This is part of the campaign of resistance, the civil disobedience and citizens' actions that we have decided to pursue to force Ruto and his regime to respect and listen to the people.
Yeah, and so, Jamila, you were asking about, what it's all about, and that's, what they were saying. But Sam, then, there we are. There's a portal that's up. They claim that they had 1.5 million people who'd signed up in the first few hours or so. And the other side is also saying, so what are these signatures for? There's one way to get a president out if that's what you want. That is through Parliament. There's an impeachment process. The president is saying, well, look, this is about somebody who's not satisfied with the election outcome that was months ago. In fact, today, Sam, this administration is
10 months.
Exactly today.
Exactly 10 months. Okay. Because it's 13th of July.
And here we are, Sam, 10 months later.
Yeah. I mean, a Kenyan would have expected that 10 months later, that would be busy going on with our lives and trying to build what we can, because, this is precious time. I look at the images of people that have suffered, including the police officer that I see on the screen there. Is it necessary? When you look at the businesses that have lost a lot of revenues, property and stock, is it necessary? Then you look at the tumechoka.com, the platform that Raila Odinga is talking about, and you open it and it says that it's a citizen initiative. Having read and understood the intention of the promoters of this initiative, I hereby support the citizens' initiative to remove from office Mr. William Ruto as president and Mr. Rigathi Gachagua as deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. So it requires you to input your details of the ID number, your name, your phone number, your constituency, your ward, and also your sign. So you wonder, okay, the question, or rather what has been solved is the intention is to delegitimize the government or the administration of President William Ruto. And I've been on the show, the morning show, and asking questions, what exactly does delegitimize mean? Because the process of removing a president or a deputy president is quite clear in the Constitution on the provisions of how to impeach a president or a deputy president. But now, this is sign up an initiative to remove the two from office. So I think there's a bit of some breakage of the communication channel. There's some information that is not going to the public, so that as they sign up, as they engage, whether it's in the public sphere or it's on the streets, they know what they're fighting for, because there has been talk that this is about the Finance Act 2023, that this is about the cost of living. If you look at the Finance Act, it's already in court. In fact, its application has been suspended. Never mind that EPRA is yet to heed to those orders of the High Court. But now, when you speak to a Kenyan on the street and tell them that you want them to participate in demonstrations next Wednesday, what exactly are they supposed to be protesting over? Yeah. And then you listen to different voices, like the people that Brenda Wanga spoke to in Kitengela. They're saying that they saw a crowd of nearly 500 people coming into the town and then storming the supermarket there, and all of them look like they're not from there. If that be true, so meaning people are being shipped to towns, or they are finding their ways into towns to go and cause the mayhem that you're witnessing. So you don't know who is doing this. In all this confusion, what is being lost is the truth. And in essence, what exactly the intention of this exercise is. Because even as you listen to the president saying that they know that in 2 months' time they won't have the talk they have today, sort of he's insinuating that in 2 months' time, probably the crops that are in the farms will have matured, there will be more food in the economy or in the society, so probably this will no longer be an issue. But therein, I think, is where we're missing the point. There is so much that you're not listening to. There's no one who is patient enough to understand what exactly are the issues, but also the country is using the wrong means to resolve probably issues that might actually be valid.
And you know, you mentioned something about what the real issues are. One thing that is not in doubt, regardless of which side of the political divide one supports, is that the cost of living has gone up significantly over the last year. The reasons for that are both historical and present. The reasons for that are both internal and international. And at the end of the day, is it a case of perhaps one political side using that and weaponizing that with the people, and yet another side of the political divide perhaps not speaking to and addressing those issues in a way that seems empathetic, at least? Everybody knows where we are. Everybody understands what 1,000 shillings can do for you today versus what it could do for you at this very same time last year versus even 2 years or 3 years ago. And so is there a sense in which the government can start to address some of those issues? Maybe some would say there's no need for empathy and there's no need for emotion. It is what it is, and we are in the situation that we find ourselves in. But there are some tough choices, of course, certainly, that the country is going to have to go through. How is that being communicated to the people in a way that enables them understand that, okay, things are tough, we're working through it? And is there a sense in which someone else can then come in and take advantage, regardless of who you put on the other side? Once you have a situation that pretends itself in this way, could anybody come and use that to their advantage? Or could they be the ones who, if they claim, are championing the rights of those who feel that, the government, the economic situation is pretty hard and pretty difficult for them? And so, like you say, Sam, at the end of the day, you've got the people caught in the crossfire. They're the ones who go to the shop every day, to the supermarket, to the kiosk, to the market, even the wholesale markets that people used to go to for bargains, and life is certainly not the same. And so they're caught between a rock and a hard place. The protests certainly don't make that any better. Because businesses are shut for a day, for 2 days, and revenue is lost, and who knows what effect that'll have in the coming days and weeks on jobs in the country. But like you say, at the heart of it, there is a big issue in the country. There is huge sentiment. I mean, take a look at social media, even on Twitter. I mean, I hosted the commissioner, the acting commissioner general of the Kenya Revenue Authority just earlier this week on Tuesday. And even in all of the comments, many people were talking about their businesses and how they're thriving. There is a lot of sentiment in the country, on social media, in person. You meet people and, hey, maisha siku hizi ni ngumu. Finding a job is hard. How many jobs do you see? Thousands and thousands of people showing up for positions that are about maybe 100 or less. So there is a problem in this country, and who is speaking to that in a way that people feel they are being heard, and that something is being done, and that even if it may take some time, that we will get there. And my last point, and this is also about how we... it'll just be one line about how we, campaign in poetry, and we now govern in prose. Right. I think that'll speak for itself.
I think. Okay, I was going to call you that nickname that we call you.
Ngoja hiyo kwanza.
What wangejua? Gituku, before you come in, something Yvonne just said about who is listening and a communication gap. Because if you look at some of the government's policies, when they were campaigning, they had a manifesto. And that's part of the reason why they were elected, is because of what was in that manifesto, the promises that were made. And maybe there are some aspects of the manifesto that the government is trying to implement. But then some of those things will be beneficial to people, not maybe in the immediate or medium, maybe in the long term. But people need to be explained to in a way that makes them understand that hii hali mbaya ambayo tunayoshuhudia hivi sasa haitakuwa forever. Kuteseka ni kwa muda, things will get better. And for that to happen, for that communication to hit home and for people to actually understand, they need to be listened to, as you talk about, as you say. You need to listen to what people are saying. We've talked about how even when the Finance Act was a finance bill, and we've mentioned it in this show before, there was public participation that was done. And we saw people speaking out against the finance bill compared to those who were for it. Were they listened to? And if they had been listened to, could we have seen more amendments in the finance bill before it became Finance Act and became a law? So are we listening to the people? Because if one thing is clear, we cannot go back. We cannot have the Maandamano every week because the loss of life. I was watching the story today at 7 o'clock by Gatete about a mother talking about how her daughter was in school, was at her college, and she was outside the gate, and she got shot, and she died. I saw a sister saying, my brother came to stay with me, namrudisha nyumbani sasa kwa sanduku. We can't have that. We can't have that loss of life. We can't have that damage to property. We cannot have what we saw on Wednesday, and we cannot have what we saw on Friday. So people need to talk to each other, not at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you're seeing is the leaders are doing now the back and forth. On both sides, one staying firm, actually both sides standing firm, in their positions. And, they're talking to each other at that level, and who's talking to, or even more importantly, listening to the people.
Right. And of course, truly, there are certain concerns that whoever was going to win the election was going to have to contend with. And on data points, we are looking at the public debt. If in May of this year it stood at 9.6 trillion shillings, and the debt ceiling at the moment is 10 trillion shillings. Remember the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury telling Parliament that there's a plan to change that to have a debt anchor of 55% of the GDP. So obviously that may give room or not for the country to borrow more. But there are certain realities, including that credit rating of being negative. It means that for the government to really access more foreign debt, it will have to become expensive. And if that is the reality, why isn't the government explaining? Because they keep saying fiscal consolidation. I've had that line for so long since the former cabinet secretary was there, that is Henry Rotich. Nobody bothers to explain to the people what exactly are you talking about, because not everyone has studied finance, matters finance, or even business courses. So if indeed fiscal consolidation has to be implemented, and let me just explain here so that I do not become...
You don't fall foul of your own...
Exactly. So you're talking about either raising taxes, so you collect more taxes, or you reduce the expenditure or the spending by the government, or both. You can raise taxes and reduce the expenditure, or you decide to raise the taxes. I mean, if you're not raising taxes, you reduce the expenditure. Now, unfortunately, the government is raising the taxes, but also raising the expenditure. So in the end, you end up with probably a naught. And if this is explained to the people, but also tell them, I was reading a paper and saying that you have to tell the economy, the citizens, for how long will this apply, so that Kenyans know if we have to go through some pain before it gets better, how long would that be? If you're raising the taxes, whether it's from the housing levy, whether it's from more taxes for high-income earners, for how long would that have to be sustained? And that is information that has to be given. I'm reading from one of the members of parliament in Kisumu, tweeting us and saying that the intention here is to ensure that the president reduces the taxes, because at the moment they're just all unbearable. They cannot be introduced all at once. It will make life too difficult for Kenyans. But then the process that is being used is questionable, especially if you're looking at it in terms of the impact it's having. Look at the roads, look at the deaths, look at whatever is happening. Businesses disrupted. Well, it's a good cause. What are we doing?
Yeah, and what you said about raising taxes or reducing spending, either way, we're going to feel that. That's going to be painful for us either way. If you talk about reducing spending, part of that reducing of spending could include retrenchments and laying off, particularly within the civil service, in a place where, the government is the direct employer. Raising taxes means, the very same people are going to have to pay more. Either way, the choices, whether it's to do one or the other or to do both, it's going to come at a cost and at a price to Kenyans. But I think the idea is, how do we carry them along with that message? Like you said, when you give a timeline, then we know, okay, we're tightening our belts for X period, and at the end of it, this is where we will be. But, you know, like we said, the economic situation in the country was what it was, regardless of who would have come in. These were issues that we're going to have to deal with. We'd been having issues even before that. The issue of pending bills, by the way, has been long-standing, over 10 years in the making. You know, there's been external issues. But I think it's the idea of where are we? People have pain points, and how are those being addressed in a way that then, if you claim that somebody is taking advantage of those pain points, then how are you addressing them? And by addressing them, it might not mean that you give immediate solutions or immediate relief, but if, like you say, people are able to walk along with you and see this is where it's going, and it's in the communication, it's in the tone, it's in the way you say it, it's in your demeanor, it's in you know, how you communicate that to the people that then says, we are with you, we feel your pain, we understand this, we empathize, it's going to be tough, but you know, let's go forward. Jamila.
That's true, Yvonne. You speak about communication. It's a big deal about it, because it's I don't think anyone foresaw us being in this situation at this point in time. Because we elected a government in August. We went to court, the Supreme Court made its ruling, a government was sworn in, and we expect things to be going as they should. And you make a good point when you say, even Gituku said it, that legally, really, some of the demands by the opposition really do not make any sense. Because legally, they went to court after the elections. Legally, the Supreme Court proclaimed its result. Even when you look at the Finance Act, despite what happened when it was a bill and the fact that it was signed into law, the law was followed. The process was followed. Yes, now there's the High Court ruling about the case being heard, and the CJ is expected to appoint a 3-judge bench to listen to the issue about the Finance Act and whether it will be implemented or not. The law was followed. And we need to be realistic about what exactly needs to be done if there are any issues about the leadership. You say there's a process if you want to impeach a president through parliament, through, you know, all that. We should follow that. Because I think nothing is worth the loss of life. Nothing is worth loss of people's property. When we're looking at what happened in Kitengela, how much looting happened. Because even if you legitimately have called for Maandamano because you're agitating for issues, it's in the Constitution, the right to picket. But you cannot control people who go and loot. I mean, hey, people are desperate. If you go and you see that kuna mayhem, duka ndo hiyo iko wazi, naweza kwenda kuchukua unga, utaenda utachukua. So that's the thing. We should find better ways of passing the message. Yeah?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Look, there was also a bit of confusion. There was one on the national level, there was loss of lives, but then didn't we see something else happening within